Okay, we already went through our rest of season running backs. We're going to hit the wide receiver position. And I will say, I've seen the comments of asking us to do a 60-player tier list with flex. Are you losing your mind? I'm going to do my best to dive into 30 guys here. I mean, this is pretty damn hard. But anyway, before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. If you want to request anything crazy down there in the comment section, feel free to go right for it. And also in the comment section, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy. When you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. And you can check out all these awesome player props. But I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into this. Starting off tier 1, player 1, Tyreek Hill. Honestly, didn't think we were going to have Tyreek Hill at 1 until we had the Josh Allen injury looking a little more concerning, until we had Matthew Stafford popping up in concussion protocol. I think if you're looking at a week-to-week standpoint, Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 1. I mean, the man has over 1,100 receiving yards so far this season. Plus, we had Tua Tagovailoa missing time. But keep in mind, Tyreek hasn't gone through his bye week, whereas pretty much everybody else in this tier already has. And we're going to go ahead. We are going to be taking Cooper Kupp at 2. If we are looking at Cooper Kupp, I mean, obviously, we are going to need to go ahead and we're going to need to monitor the Matthew Stafford situation, even if Stafford misses this week. Long term, you should be fine. Cooper Kupp has one of the highest floor and ceiling combinations you're going to find in fantasy football, not just at the wide receiver position. And also, keep in mind that with Cooper Kupp, he's already gone through that bye. Very similar to Jefferson at 3. Jefferson hasn't been as good as a lot of people expected him to be coming into the season. You know, we had a lot of conversations about Justin Jefferson from other people potentially being the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Well, he hasn't been quite that. He's still a player that has an extremely high floor. Don't be off of Jefferson just because maybe he didn't get 10 times better from where he was last year. I think people are just kind of tired of the greatness from Jefferson at this point. We're going to go Stephon Diggs at 4. Diggs would have been ahead of Jefferson if it wasn't for the Josh Allen elbow. I think you could honestly maybe move Stephon Diggs behind Davante Adams at 5 if you are worried about the Josh Allen elbow. I mean, I was kind of ignoring it at the beginning of the week because when we did have a lot of people talking about it, I just looked at Las Vegas sports books and you had the Buffalo Bills favored by 7.5 points over Minnesota. So I was saying, okay, no, looks like the elbow's fine. Looks like we don't need to be worried. Then Allen misses practice multiple days this week. Then that line drops from 7.5 to 3.5, where now I am a little bit more concerned when it comes to Stephon Diggs. And obviously, Davante Adams has to be a top-tier guy. If we have both Hunter Renfrow as well as Darren Waller hitting the IR, I mean, the targets are just guaranteed for Davante Adams here. But now dropping down to our next tier, I think most people are going to expect us to have DeAndre Hopkins at 6. Y'all know, I mean, I've been a massive proponent. I mean, we had DeAndre Hopkins on a buy low video every single week for pretty much a month. I know everybody in the vlog has DeAndre Hopkins. We're going to have him at 7. We're going to go A.J. Brown at 6. However, with A.J. Brown, you're already through the bye week, whereas DeAndre Hopkins is not. And on top of this, if we are looking at DeAndre Hopkins, while we would rank him ahead of some of these other players in this range on a week-to-week standpoint right now, we also have to think about long-term when you get Hollywood Brown back in at the very end of the year. Now, I don't necessarily think Hollywood's going to be the wide receiver 1 here. It will still be DeAndre Hopkins, but hell, I mean, it will be something that you need to be somewhat concerned with. And now our next guy, Jalen Waddle at 8. With Jalen Waddle, you know he's my guy. I mean, with Waddle, he's the top 5 wide receiver in receiving yards so far this season. I mean, I actually want to be a little bit more excited. I already have a very hard time ranking Jalen Waddle, though, because he is my most drafted wide receiver in fantasy. So I feel like if we try to put him up there at the top of this tier, we're just extremely biased. And our last guy is going to be Jamar Chase at 9. Chase, very difficult player to rank because if you're a team that's guaranteed to make the fantasy football playoffs, you're sitting at 8-1, you're sitting at 7-2. You'd rather have Jamar Chase over Jalen Waddle, over DeAndre Hopkins, maybe even over A.J. Brown. Whereas if you're a team fighting for your life right now, if you're 3-6, 4-5, you maybe would even rank Jamar Chase a little bit lower than this. So please understand the dynamic of your roster, your current record, and when you need fantasy points in your starting lineup, because that will affect how Jamar Chase is ranked. But now dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown at 10. I mean, I know that people are worried with St. Brown. Yes, the man hasn't caught a touchdown in quite some time. But if we go back to look at what we had at the very end of last season, if we look at what we had at the very beginning of this year as well, I am not worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I still view Amon-Ra St. Brown as a locked and loaded top 10 wide receiver every single week. With St. Brown, I would make the argument that his situation is even better than it was. I mean, now you have no TJ Hawkinson here rest of season. You have DJ Shark on the IR as well. It's a great spot for St. Brown. I think he's a top buy low candidate. Now our next guy, T. Higgins at 11. With Higgins, I mean, on bye this week, you have no idea how long Jamar Chase is going to miss. If you think we still get another 2-3 games out of T. Higgins with no Jamar Chase, you'd probably have him a little bit higher than this because while I love Joe Mixon, he's not scoring 5 touchdowns every week. Now our next wide receiver, Amari Cooper at 12. With Amari, I would not rank him this high as it stands for right this second. But long-term, he's going to continue to rise. I mean, Amari Cooper's been phenomenal. Then you add Deshaun Watson into this offense. On top of this, the final 3 weeks, Amari Cooper has the best fantasy football playoff schedule among any wide receiver. So then we kind of have to have Amari as that top 12 option. I mean, it's very hard to get away from it. But what is a little funny with Amari Cooper is if we look at the home-away splits, I mean, at home, Amari Cooper looks like, a bona fide stud, top 10 wide receiver any given week. And then away, he looks like someone that's not startable. So let's see how this continues to go through the rest of the season. It is really funny. Now, our next guy, Chris Olave at 13. With Olave, you have no Michael Thomas rest of season. If we have no Michael Thomas rest of season, I know this offense wasn't great this past week. Trust me. Praying that we get Jameis Winston back in here for a couple key best ball teams that I have. Really praying that we get Winston back very soon. Sounds like it may not happen, but Olave's been phenomenal. You have no Michael Thomas. The targets are very safe. I don't think Alvin Kamara is getting suspended at this point, though. Now, our next guy is CeeDee Lamb at 14. Let me know if y'all think we have CeeDee Lamb a little too low here. I mean, if you're looking at the raw points per game so far from players in this range, CeeDee Lamb has, not been great. Keep in mind, this is a wide receiver that just plays on an offense that has an elite defense, that doesn't have to go through and run the ball in the second half. It is what it is. I think if all of a sudden teams were to be competitive with the Dallas Cowboys in the second half, making Dak Prescott throw the ball, you would be more excited about Lamb. And then our last wide receiver in this tier will be Mike Evans at 15. The passing volumes there in Tampa, they're not that good. You're not excited about Tom Brady from a real life perspective, but we've been talking about this all season. If you look at the passing yards in Tampa, if you're looking at the passing attempts in general, you just have so much volume that even if they're not great, Evans, Godwin are still guys I'm comfortable with. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go back-to-back Seattle wide receivers. We're going to go Lockett and Metcalf. I want to rank Metcalf ahead of Lockett. Obviously, Metcalf, bigger, more exciting. Has the name brand appeal. But Tyler Lockett's been more productive so far this season. If we were going through and playing Madden, sure, maybe you could have DK Metcalf ahead of Tyler Lockett. I had DK Metcalf ahead of Tyler Lockett at the very beginning of the season. But it's very difficult to look at, the first 10 weeks we've had, and to go through and ignore all of that. So we are going to go ahead and we're going to take Lockett over Metcalf because, he's been ahead of him. And now our next wide receiver in this tier, Chris Godwin, 18. Godwin's been one of my premier buy low candidates, and that people are very worried and very off of him because he has not scored a touchdown yet. I think that's really what it is. I feel like it's literally just people are looking at Chris Godwin saying, okay, well, the points aren't there, yada, yada, and not really looking into the fact that outside of week 1 where he left early with an injury, Chris Godwin's been a wide receiver consistently averaging 10 targets a game. Yes, he hasn't scored a touchdown, but that is going to change. We know touchdowns can be very random and very volatile over a small sample, so I'm completely fine buying in on Godwin. And yes, I will have Godwin ranked ahead of Deebo Samuel. I know we're going to be very low on Deebo Samuel here at 19. I get it. I know that we're low. I'm fine with it. With Deebo Samuel, if you look at the points per game so far, he's not really higher than this. And that's considering the context. You had no Christian McCaffrey at the beginning of this season. You had George Kittle miss a large chunk of games. So now that we have both these players in here, it's going to be so much more difficult for Deebo Samuel to have this volume. So, I think that if you have Deebo Samuel on your roster, you could 100% trade him for Godwin, one of the Seattle Seahawks wide receivers, or anybody in the tier above. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Allen Lazard at 20. With Allen Lazard, I'm actually ranking him much higher than this in the short term because obviously we have Romeo Doubs, Randall Cobb, Christian Watson, all injured in Green Bay. So in the short term, I think Allen Lazard may be a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. Long term, I think he will come back down to earth when we get some of these wide receivers healthy back in this Green Bay Packers offense. But hell, looks to be a great spot even if this offense is very bad with the target share he'll have because they have nobody else to go to. And then our next wide receiver, Michael Pittman, 21. Y'all know this offseason I built a brand about screaming that Michael Pittman and Courtland Sutton were overrated. And you should be avoiding them in fantasy drafts. Like, yes, I have been branded the anti-Michael Pittman guy, but I've actually found myself telling people to trade for Michael Pittman with some of the questions we're getting in the live streams. Like people asking us Michael Pittman versus Terry McLaurin. And I'm sitting here going, okay, well, yeah, Michael Pittman hasn't been great, but he's outproduced Terry McLaurin so far this season. And I understand why people are going to be worried about the Indianapolis Colts here. I mean, Jeff Saturday coming in. I know a lot of people think that they are just going through, burning it down, that they have no hope rest of season. The Indianapolis Colts are the worst offense in the NFL in points scored so far this year, at least on a per game basis. They've been the worst offense in the NFL so far this season. How does it get worse? There's only one way to go from here. And now going over to our next tier, we're going to go Juju Smith-Schuster. We can actually move Juju up into the tier with Lazard and Pittman. With Juju Smith-Schuster here, I think that he's somewhat an intriguing sell high guy in that, yes, the target volume has been phenomenal in KC, but if we get Tony worked up going forward, if we maybe get Patrick Mahomes not dropping back 70 times a game, I think it would probably be smart for the Kansas City Chiefs to try to preserve Patrick Mahomes here and don't ask him to do so much. I think we may get a small hit to Juju Smith-Schuster over the past 3 weeks, though. He has been phenomenal. He's been way ahead of this over the past 3 weeks. Now our next year, we're going to go Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, 23, 24. I don't know what to do. Obviously, these are guys that look like they're not going to be giving you production right now. But long-term, you should be good. Long-term, I think you're going to be good. I mean, if you are a fantasy football playoff team, the good thing is the Chargers are obviously in the hunt for the real-life playoffs. Like the Chargers are at least perceived to be a Super Bowl contender where they don't have any incentive to shut down Keenan Allen, to shut down Mike Williams with them still winning football games. So I think we get these guys back for the fantasy football playoffs. We're going to go Jacoby Myers at 25. With Myers, you don't love the passing volume in New England, but what you do like is the fact that he gets a lot of it. We have the Devontae Parker injury. I'm assuming Devontae Parker is good to go after the bye week, however. And now our next guy, Christian Kirk at 26. With Kirk, I was actually more excited about him about a month or two ago. The issue with Christian Kirk at this point is the fact that we've just seen a dramatic step back. And I repeat, a dramatic step back with the overall passing volume in Jacksonville. I'm hoping that they look a little bit closer to what they were at the beginning portion of the season, because during that stretch of games, I mean, coming off the Los Angeles Chargers performance, we thought Jacksonville was going to be able to give us a ton of production. We thought that Christian Kirk was going to be a must-start guy every week, but they have scaled themselves dramatically back, and really it looks like ETN's just the main guy to have in Jacksonville. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Gabe Davis at 27. With Gabe Davis, we had him as a clear sell-high guy earlier in the season, but now it's a little bit of a different situation. I mean, the expectations with Gabriel Davis have come down dramatically, even though with Gabriel Davis, he is still seeing the same amount of targets that he had earlier in the season. Like, nothing's really changed with the player, the situation. The only thing is, I mean, hell, it's going to be a super volatile option from a week-to-week basis. He's had a couple dud games as of late. So he went from being a sell high guy to us earlier in the season to now maybe a little bit more of a buy low guy, especially with the Josh Allen injury if he has another dud game this week. Now, Garrett Wilson is going to be at 28. Garrett Wilson expanding his role. No Elijah Moore, also with the Corey Davis injury. Hasn't been a ton of passing volume from Zach Wilson in the overall Jets offense so far this year. But keep in mind, over the past 3 weeks when you had Zach Wilson in, I mean, they've had some brutal matchups going up against Buffalo, New England, Denver. The matchup should get a little bit better going forward. Garrett Wilson looks like that breakout rookie receiver. Then our next guy, Devonta Smith, 29. I mean, we talked a lot about Smith. We've talked about Gabriel Davis a ton as well. These are wide receivers in elite offenses playing alongside stud alpha wide receivers. So they aren't going to have that floor from a week-to-week standpoint with their target volume, but they're going to have random spike weeks and have elite level ceilings in fantasy. Now, our next guy, I know everybody in the Premier chat right now, I can just sense it. Everybody's going, oh my God, he forgot about Terry McLaurin. Where is Terry McLaurin, this clown? What's the ceiling with Terry McLaurin? Logan Thomas missed a chunk of the season. Jahan Dotson has missed the majority of the year. Diami Brown suffered an injury. Everything positive that could happen to Terry McLaurin already has. And Terry McLaurin still, if we were looking at a raw points per game perspective, has not been someone you're excited to put in your starting lineup. I know he has a high Madden rating. I know everybody loves the player. I know everybody loves the name. But if we look at the underlying production, it's not really there with Terry McLaurin. Curtis Samuel's outscored Terry McLaurin so far this season. If we get Jahan Dotson back soon, I mean, I don't think he's going to be startable with how bad this Washington offense is. And now Jerry Jeudy, 31. I don't think it's going to be easy to start him in Denver either. And we're going to go DJ Moore at 32 as well. Now, DJ Moore is actually a wide receiver that I liked here in this range. I mean, I think that all these players are very talented. The last three guys here in Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, and DJ Moore. However, the issue is if you're playing in piss poor offenses that can't effectively move the ball down the field, how excited can we ever be to put you in the starting lineup? I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I would much rather take a shot on someone like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, that at least if they come back later in the year, they can actually make a difference in your lineup, or I don't know if we're going to get that from guys like Jerry Jeudy and Terry McLaurin. Quick side note, I'm recording this before the Thursday night game, so if DJ Moore drops 30 points, feel free to make fun of me in the comment section. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day. Make sure you drop a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to check out any of these player props, you can do so on Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link in the comment section. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You'll notice we maybe didn't have Courtland Sutton on this video. Trust me, I did not forget him. And I would actually go and look to take the less than on the 54.5 receiving yards for Courtland Sutton on Underdog this week. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.